Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfound Now, the monthly series where I take a look at recent disappearances. And who am I? I am, of course, Ed Densel, host of the podcast that comes out every Friday, Unfound. Today, we're going to look at the recent disappearance of Joseph Gagnon. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Gagnon. I believe that is French, although I don't believe he was French. I think he was from Vermont. And this is the disappearance that happened, like I said, just recently in Burlington, Vermont. And Joseph was 52 at the time of his disappearance. This is another one of those person goes missing after a car wreck. And as I will get into later in this video, this has to be one of the most misunderstood disappearances that we feature either here on Unfound Now or over on the regular podcast that has been out for almost 9 years, Unfound. We've covered quite a few disappearances where cars are abandoned or cars are wrecked and the people aren't there. And I thought it was once again time to go over this even in more detail. And some other disappearances that have been featured either here on Unfound Now or the podcast. Mara Murray, could hers be the most famous car wreck disappearance, at least of the 21st century in the United States? Very possibly. Another one, though, that is happened much more recently that has gotten a lot of attention nationally is, of course, Jason Landry in Texas. Featured him as an Unfound Now episode, and then I interviewed his father for a podcast episode that happened in Luling, Texas. And then another Unfound Now disappearance, car wreck, runoff that ended up getting solved was Steven Salazar, who went missing in Harrisburg, and he jumped into what is the river that goes through Harrisburg. I believe that's the Susquehanna River. He went and just jumped off a bridge into the Susquehanna after getting into a car wreck. His remains were eventually found. But like I said, I thought we needed to go over this again, and we will use Joseph's disappearance as an example. I, of course, hope that Joseph is still alive out there somewhere, but I think the odds say most likely he's not, and I will give you my reasons a little later. As you are listening/watching this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are not yet a subscriber to this channel, hit the little button there in the bottom right-hand corner. Consider supporting what we do here at Unfound by hitting the join button below or going over to Patreon, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. For this episode, I want you to think about 3 points that I will come back to later. Number 1, do a Google search. Number 2, there's something about this kind of disappearance. And number 3, what's going on? I'm now going to go to the map, show you approximately where Joseph wrecked, do a little diagram there, and then I will come back to talk about those 3 points. Okay, let's take a look at this map. We're looking at the northern side, that's what I'd call, of Burlington, Vermont. It's not a very large city. But I will zoom out here just so you can see what I'm talking about. Right there, you can see Burlington. We don't have an exact location of where Joseph wrecked, but we do know, according to this article that I'm going to read here, that the Ethan Allen homestead was searched along with the surrounding area. So here's the Ethan Allen homestead. So it had to have been near here, and this is the Route 127 right here that is mentioned in the news article. So I'm going to read those now. I'm going to zoom out this out a little bit so you can look at that area, take that in while I'm reading this. These are not very long. An investigation is going on in the search for a missing person in Burlington. Police say Joseph Gagnon's vehicle was found abandoned just before 8 p.m. on Friday, March 14th, following a crash on the Burlington Beltline formerly known as Route 127. Officials say Gagnon fled the scene on foot and has not been seen since. The case has been assigned to the Detective Services Bureau to allow for a more thorough investigation. Meanwhile, the emergency response unit has been utilizing drones to search the surrounding woods. Gagnon is described as 5 feet, 6 inches tall, weighs about 140 pounds. He was last seen wearing a gray and black checkered coat, a camouflage hat, blue jeans, and work boots. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is asked to call the Burlington Police Department at 802-658-2704. Now, here is something else that was written. On March 14th, 2025, Joseph Gagnon was involved in a single vehicle accident on Route 127 in Burlington, Vermont. After the crash, he fled the scene on foot, leaving his phone and wallet behind. He has not been seen since, and searches have been conducted in the surrounding areas, including the Winooski River, which, as you can see, is right there to the east of that location where the red dot is. The Ethan Allen homestead, if you don't know, Ethan Allen was a famous guy back in the founding days of the United States, and they're in the 1700s. That is where the red mark is. As you can see, Ethan Allen Homestead, Museum and Historic Site. And the Intervale did not try to locate that on the map. His family is deeply concerned as this behavior is uncharacteristic and he has a history of back problems. If you have any information, please contact the Burlington Police Department at 802-658-2700. Once again, this happened on March 14th. He's 52. He's 5'6". He's 140 pounds. He fled after the car accident. Searches have been conducted in the wooded areas and the river. They've had organized community search parties, and his family is very concerned. Now, something that might catch our eye in that story is he had back pain. Was he on painkillers? And anybody who knows sports knows about Tiger Woods and his bout with painkillers and driving while on painkillers and getting into a wreck and being pulled over for swerving and everything. So this is what painkillers can do. If you're taking them, don't drive. So we may think about, could this be the reason that he wrecked? Just an idea. So looking at this map, you can see 127 running around it right down here to this quarter of a cloverleaf interchange. But the river's right here. And certainly, if he wrecked up in this area where I have the cursor right now, the river is right there. Now, would he know that? If he's from the area, I guess he probably would. I'm not saying he committed suicide or anything, but it's right there. Whereas if we go down more toward the Ethan Allen homestead, where the Winooski River goes away from the road for a little bit, then it's going to take a little more work for him to get to the river. But what I'm also seeing is there's housing right here. Have these people checked their backyards, their sheds, things like that? In the meantime, even going back up here more to the top of the screen, have these people checked their backyards and bushes and areas like that? We know that can happen. Think about Daniel Villarreal. Disappearance I featured on the podcast. He was eventually found in somebody's backyard pool house. We also have to think about these woods right here. And I know they've said that search parties and drones and everything. There's no better searches than boots on the ground, but you got to have enough of them. And they have to be people who are really, really there for the right reasons, instead of just saying, well, let's just go out and do something for today. And, oh, wouldn't that be cool to be involved in a search? You don't need people like that. All right, you're better off, for those people running searches, you're better off without people like that. Now, how you weed those people out, I don't know. But I think what I'm saying is if you have 100 people who show up for a search, unfortunately, a decent percentage of them probably going to be there for the wrong reasons. If it's just like a call out, people show up. I'm not saying law enforcement, just some community call out request. A lot of people are going to be there for the wrong reasons. So there's that. Of course, if he could have run this way, like in this, I guess you might call it a little bit of a peninsula, could have gone a far ways, out here somewhere. He could be along the banks of the river. But if he's on land, pretty sure he's not far away. But if he went into the river, then we have to start thinking about what was the river doing that night. I don't know. But it's not the Mississippi, so it doesn't have the flow, doesn't have the speed, so that might make it more likely that his remains could be found, but it's gonna have to be judged by somebody who really understands this river really, really well. So that is where Joseph Gagnon wrecked. One car wreck, no other cars involved. Did he wreck because he swerved to miss a deer? I doubt it, because people who swerve to miss deers and wreck their cars, if they aren't injured, usually stay with their cars, call 911, because they know they weren't doing anything wrong. It's just bad luck. And I say that as a guy who hit a deer once. Whereas when people flee, there are reasons. All right, let's get back to those 3 points I brought up at the beginning of this video, and then we'll conclude April 2025's episode of Unfound Now. Okay, now time to get into those 3 points I brought up before the map section. And I remind you once again, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to Unfound. And if you are completely unfamiliar with the podcast, find it on Spotify and or iTunes or many other podcast platforms and start listening. You got a lot of listening to do, because the podcast has been out for almost 9 years. All right, number one, do a Google search. Now, I would usually never tell you to stop this video or a recording, MP3 file, MP4 file in the middle, but I'm going to tell you to do that this time. Just for me, stop this video here on YouTube, go to Google, and do a search for car wreck runoff. Just those 4 words, car wreck runoff, and see how much that happens in the United States. Often. And so it's always weird to me that sometimes when people email me or I get into discussions with listeners or maybe just the general public, I'm watching some other person's video or I'm watching something on TV, whatever, and everybody is just so confused about, well, why would the person run away? And people run away because they're usually doing something they're not supposed to be doing behind the wheel. We have to remember some things about the United States. We are a car culture. We have more cars per capita than any country in the world. It's a car culture. Whether you're into 1960s Corvettes or new Teslas or anything in between, we have a lot of cars here in the United States. A lot of roads, a lot of highways, a lot of traffic jams, a lot of cars. So things are going to happen. Whereas on the other hand, if we go to a society or a civilization country where cars aren't as prevalent, maybe we think about Europe with its train system, I'm guessing that car wrecks and people running off happens a lot less. There are fewer types of that kind of incident happening. So lots of people doing things they shouldn't be doing, lots of people driving who shouldn't be driving, and I think a lot of people doing these things know it. Now, I'm not a drinker, never been. Well, I've never been drunk or anything. I haven't had a drop of alcohol since like 2005 or something. But I've never been drunk, never, then of course have never drank and drove. Is that how you'd say it? But I'm guessing a lot of you are drinkers, not alcoholics or anything, but I'm guessing you can look back on your life and say, man, there was that one time I don't know how I made it home. I shouldn't have been driving. That was stupid. I'm luckily I didn't hurt myself. I didn't hurt anybody else. I am so fortunate, and man, am I happy that I learned my lesson. Well, most of these incidents you hear about people wrecking and running off, those people are you, except they weren't as lucky as you. That's who these people are. So this is not unusual. I'm stunned when people think it's unusual that these kinds of things happen, these incidents happen. And certainly there are crimes being committed because a lot of times these people shouldn't be driving. They're drinking and driving. And we know people a lot of times get thrown in jail for doing that. And maybe they're high or whatever else. They could have some mental health issues. Now, in this particular circumstance with Joseph, might be hard to say. Maybe he was drinking, maybe it's something else. But don't look at his disappearance and others like his and said, man, that is so rare. Something else had to be going on. He had to have gotten run off the road or something. No, not at all. And your Google search should have proved it. Number 2, there's something about this kind of disappearance, and yes, this is a little bit of a riff on the movie. There's something about Mary, even though I'm not even that big of a fan of that movie. But in any case, I've been doing this for almost 9 years now, Unfound now for almost 5, but the actual podcast for almost 9 years. We've featured over 360 disappearances. I've talked to probably round number 500 families, maybe easily more than that. Some of them didn't end up on the podcast for one reason or another, but over 500 family members over the past almost 9 years. So I have a wide range of experience on all types of disappearances, and there is something about this type, car wrecked, or abandoned on a road or something, that gets the human mind into creative mode, like in a very, very crazy way. Of course, the best example is Murray's, and we did feature it on the podcast, so I feel comfortable talking about it. But I'm guessing most, if not all of you, know all of the theories that have come out since she went missing, what was it, not quite 20 years ago now. And her car was wrecked. But there are people who say it wasn't even she behind the wheel, that the bus driver did it, that the cops did it, that somebody else picked her up. You get all of these stories. And hers is just the most well-known one, whereas I could cite others that maybe not as many stories as Mara's, but certainly along those lines. That something like Leah Roberts, her car was also found wrecked. Same kind of thing, wrecked. Same kind of thing. That somebody had to have picked her up. She was murdered. She didn't park, she didn't wreck her car there, on and on and on and on. What is going on here? What is my best insight into all this? Well, I think it goes back to what my point was in number 1, is that I just don't think the general public realizes how often these kinds of situations happen. Now, granted, in most of the situations, these people are found. A lot of these are people drinking and driving, wrecking their cars, running off, not wanting to be caught at the scene, even though it's their car. But they don't want their blood to be tested. They don't want to take the breathalyzer test because they think that that's going to get them out of a drinking and driving charge. Maybe it will. I'm not a legal expert. And what's interesting about this is that I can't go into names, of course, but there's somebody in my extended family who got away with this. He was surely drinking and driving, wrecked, ran off, never had to answer for that. In addition, when I was in Canada, must have been 25 years ago or something, I was up there with my family, my mom and dad, and my cousin Jeremy. We ran across a truck that was wrecked on its side, beer bottles and things inside of it, and the driver was nowhere to be found. This is also a situation where the person ran off. So this stuff is happening all the time, but if you think that it's not happening all the time, and you don't know that most of these kinds of incidents are solved one way or another, then you start to see it as all some big conspiracy. Well, this is something that's really, really rare. People don't run away from their vehicles, so something else must have happened. Somebody must have picked this person up. This person must have got run off the road. I think that's what's going on. That's my perception. Have not done any studies on it or anything. So because people are uneducated in how often this happens, when it does happen, they see it as something that's just so unusual, and there must be some conspiracy behind it, when really there's nothing. Now, is it unusual that Maura Murray and others and Joseph and Jason Landry and other people go missing? Yes, but when you put it in the context of how much this is happening every day, this is a very, very, very small percentage of those incidents. And so you're going to have situations where people run off and maybe they have an injury, they have a head injury, and they die in the woods. Or like Steven Salazar, something was going on with him. He was in a car wreck and he went and jumped off a bridge into the Susquehanna River and killed himself. That happened. People saw it happen. His body was found in the river. That's not some 3 a.m. Reddit theory. That happened. But these situations are rare, but when you compare them to the amount of this kind of incident, somebody wrecking and running off, you're bound to have situations like this. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you that somebody has never been picked up after a car being wrecked and that person ran into the wrong person and got killed? Probably has happened. But that is so rare. And in fact, the one situation that we had that was kind of like that for sure was Paige Rinkowski. She didn't even wreck her car. It seems she voluntarily pulled over to the side of the road. This is how tough the analyzing these disappearances can be. As I've said many times on the podcast and on this series, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. Everybody would be engaged analyzing these disappearances. Instead, people just cover them, and that's about it. I like to take things further and try to understand it, what's going on, and the trends, and the overall picture, and the stats. Most people don't do that. People running off due to drugs and alcohol, common. People run off because they are a fault of an accident. You get into a wreck with somebody else, you know it's your fault, you run off. People do that. People driving without licenses and insurance, common. And in fact, people that get pulled over will run away. We did one of those. I forget the young man's name. Was it in Indiana, I think, where he got pulled over by cops and he ran off. And they had it on the badge cam or on the dash cam, him just taking off. And everybody got conspiratorial that, the cops caught him and did something to him. No, he was found in some abandoned house and he died due to the elements because it was very, very cold and he wasn't dressed for the elements. I also think that there's something that causes people to not rationally look at these disappearances is because I think they hit a little too close to home. We're all drivers, at least in the United States. Everybody's a driver in the United States. Almost everybody has a driver's license. And I think sometimes when people, the general public, does hear about these kinds of situations, people wrecking cars and maybe they're caught later drinking and driving, that there's like, well, that could have been me. And when you start personally being connected to anything in life, oftentimes you lose objectivity due to that. You have a hard time being honest about the situation when your emotions, your heart, your feelings, love, hate, everything in between starts getting wrapped up in something. It's hard to be objective. And I think that's also why you get these crazy theories and ideas that have only the odds of Powerball to be true. You just have to realize that it is so unlikely in these situations for somebody to wreck a car and for a killer to come along, a serial killer to come along. We have to remember that if there are predators out there on the byways and highways of the United States, they're not cruising back roads like here in this particular situation with Joseph in Burlington, Vermont. Predators go usually where the prey can be found. In cities, on college campuses, where people go hiking and biking, things like that. Not in Burlington, Vermont. So we also have to keep that in mind. There's just something about these disappearances. They get without error, the craziest stories. Moving on to point number 3. And number 3, what's going on? Here's what's going on with these types of disappearances. Mainly, it's a fight or flight response. You're in a wreck. You know you probably shouldn't have been doing something behind the wheel. Most likely alcohol and drugs. You know you're going to get in trouble. You know eventually the police are going to show up. Maybe not in the next few minutes, but eventually. And your flight response kicks in. You're not going to stick around to be caught because people don't like to get caught. So you're going to run off. That's what goes on. And then from there, anything can happen. A lot of the times, this stuff is happening at night, and there's no lights, and you're running off, and the person's running off into the woods, can't see, trips over a log, hits his head, dies immediately or shortly after that. Or there's an injury in the wreck, and your fight or flight response kicks in, and you take off, and the person dies in an open field somewhere because eventually there's bleeding on the brain that kills the person. And I have to say that I still think that's what happened to Jason Landry. He was obviously injured in that wreck. I could also be open to that idea with Mara Murray, that she also got hurt in that wreck. Thought she was fine, ran off, died somewhere, and she just hasn't been found. And I've gone over searches and why searches aren't successful over and over and over the past 9 years. We have to realize that searches for people often miss the people. So we got the fight or flight response. Nobody wants to get caught at something they shouldn't be doing. We have a head injury response. I don't think there's anything wrong with me, so maybe I'm going to go walk for help. That could be. We want to look upon it a little more innocently. I don't want to get caught. Maybe some people are just in areas they shouldn't be. Maybe some married guy who's going to see his mistress and he's off on some road and he swerves to miss a deer and he runs off the road and he survives and he's fine. But he's going to have a hard time explaining to his wife what he was doing there, as an example. And then he starts walking off. Same kind of thing happens. You're trudging around out in the dark. Yes, you have your phone. Maybe it got damaged in the crash. Maybe you couldn't find it in the dark or something. You're without your phone. You don't have a flashlight. You, of course, use the light that you have on your phone as a flashlight. And you go tumbling down some hill into some creek bed, hit your head on a rock, and you die. These are all very possible outcomes for situations and incidents like this. So this is what's going on, in contrast to what you will read on certain forums on the internet about people getting picked up and the smiley face killer hoax and all this other stuff. This is what frustrates me. Another good example would be the Breonna Maitland disappearance. And when I had that private investigator on, and he insists, although we didn't get too much into theories, but he really believes that she was something of foul play nature happened. Whereas my contrast to that, his thinking was her car was backed into a house. People are wrecking cars all the time and running off. Why? And it's not foul play. Why is it that so many people are so quick to jump to foul play when we know that 99.999% of the time when these things happen, it's not foul play? There's crimes committed, but they are of the nature of drinking while driving, things like that, but not something of a violent nature where some other person is involved in the disappearance. Why do people default to the thing that is least likely when there's no real evidence, reason to think otherwise? There's no signs of violence except for the wreck itself. No blood, no weapons, nothing, and still people default to it had to be foul play. That's why the person's not there. It's very, very confusing to me. And I've put that out there, and nobody has yet to send me a reason why people are so inclined to default to theories that have a very, very, very low percentage chance of being true. So that's what's going on with these kinds of disappearances. Now, what do I have to say about Joseph Gagnon's disappearance? I, of course, hope that he's still alive, but the odds of him still being alive after going missing in March, that's now a month and a half ago, probably not too good. We also have to realize that talk about, these people, maybe somebody's harboring them. Maybe they ran somewhere and this person's protecting that person because the person was drinking and driving. That is so unlikely to be true. Once again, it's like Powerball odds. Hitting the jackpot in Powerball. I'm not saying it's never happened. Powerball does get hit. But the problem is we don't know what the nature of the crash. I read somewhere that he might have hit a fence. Was he speeding? Was he drinking and driving? I did look up his record. I think some people out there might have gotten it wrong. There's more than one Joseph Gagnon in Vermont, if you can believe it. And the other one seems to have a lot of driving offenses. I think that's the wrong guy. But we also have to realize that it's always a bad sign when a wallet and phone are left behind, always, whether in a car or at a house or at a job or at the gym or on a boat or anything, at least for men. When your wallet and phone are left behind, that's usually a bad sign that the person is probably not in his right mind, took off and voluntarily, and something bad happened. Now, you may ask me, well, could he have gone into the river? Yeah, he could have gone in the river, but there's no guarantee of that. If he did, it could have been a mistake. If he's just running off there, like I said, it showed in the video, in the map part, that the river's right there. Sure, he could have, but I don't know if I would be inclined to think that it was on purpose. Maybe he's like Steven Salazar. But with Steven Salazar, he wrecked on the bridge that was over the river. This is not what happened here. I think that Joseph would have had to have gone a little ways to get to the river, but he's without any lighting. Could have been on purpose, could have been on an accident. It's not really the way I'm leaning. He could have not known what he was doing, depending on his injuries. And all I know for sure is that he didn't go far. Now, if he went into the river, then surely he is far away. But the river wasn't far away. But if he is on land, if he did not make it to the river, he has to be close. It's very, very clear. I know there are exceptions, but it's pretty clear in these incidents that if the person isn't found alive somewhere, they're usually found dead not too far away. And so for anybody listening to this who might be responsible for any searches in the area, I would say it's not really worth going a mile in any direction. No reason to go any farther than that. It's dark, unknown territory and everything else. A person is really only going to be able to go so far. So that is the disappearance of Joseph Gagnon, who went missing in Burlington, Vermont on March 14th of 2025. I hope you got something out of this. I'm all about the education. I'm learning myself, and I'm trying to pass along what I'm learning to all of you, being that this is my work. This is not your work. It's my work. You do what you do in your lives, being teachers and engineers and accountants and everything else. And this is my job, and so I'm trying to pass along what I can to you, just like you might try to pass along to me something about building a bridge or math or something like that. So once again, please give this video a thumbs up, like it, share it, subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you again next month.